With Zoom, you have the option to schedule a meeting or a webinar. Webinars are best for large groups when you do not want the attendees to have their cameras or microphones on and would rather interact with them using the chat or QA feature in Zoom. To schedule a webinar, you have to do it directly on the Zoom website. You can't do it through Canvas. Once you log into stanford.zoom.us, click on the Webinars tab. Click Schedule a Webinar. Name your webinar. Choose the Recurring Webinar option and choose No Fixed Time for the recurrence. You can require a password if you would like to keep it more secure. By default, I would recommend turning the host video on, and if you add additional panelists to present, you can turn their video on by default as well. Leave the audio on both. If you want the attendees or students to be able to ask questions, turn on Q&A. If you want to record the webinar, turn on the option and choose in the cloud. Again, keep in mind that Zoom Record is not approved for PHI, so if you are expecting to have any PHI in your presentation, please do not record in the cloud. And then click Schedule. Once you schedule the webinar, if you go back to your Webinars tab, you'll see it in your list. On the bottom of your webinar, you'll see the link to join the webinar. You can copy that link and either share it with your attendees through email, or if you're using a Canvas course, you can paste this link directly into your Canvas course under your modules. Inside my Canvas course, I have already added the Zoom webinar link under my modules. As an instructor, to initiate the webinar, go ahead and click on the Zoom webinar link. That'll launch the Zoom application. You'll notice that in a Zoom webinar, you see a few more options on the bottom, including the QA feature. This is where student questions will come in. As students enter the webinar, you'll see their names under the participants list. When a student accesses the webinar, it asks them for their name and email address. Once they register, you'll see them under the Attendees tab. Right now, we have one student who has joined this webinar. Remember, in a webinar, students cannot turn on their video or microphones. All interaction happens through text. However, as the meeting host, you do have the option to hover over the name and allow them to talk. This sends a message to the student's device telling them that they can now talk. Once they're finished, you can go back to that student. Under More, you can disable talking. You can also promote that student or attendee to a panelist, which means that they can share their video and they can also share their screen if they're presenting. To do that, hover over their name, click on More, and promote them to panelist. As questions come in, you or someone who is monitoring this webinar will see a number under the QA section. You can click that. You can see what the question says, and you have the option to either type the answer back, and then the attendees will see that response, or you can click on Answer Live if you prefer to answer it using audio. The only thing this does, if you click Answer Live, it moves the question from open to answered. That way you know that you covered that question.